What's going on, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with another fight breakdown. This is a very special breakdown, all right, because this is an undisputed fight at light heavyweight, and in my personal favorite matchup of the year, Artur Beterbiev is finally going to be facing Dmitry Bivol, and it's going to be for undisputed at light heavy. This is a first undisputed championship fight in a very, very long time. I think over 20 years. The last undisputed champion at this division was Roy Jones Jr., and I think that was back in the late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere around then. And that was in the 3-belt era. This is the 4-belt era. This is the first time that we've had an undisputed fight in the 4-belt era. All right. So this is a big fight, man. And to be honest, it's long overdue. It's long overdue. I know a lot of us complain about fights being, taking 5 years to make, but this fight, just along with Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao, just like Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford, this fight is long overdue, and it took about 5 years to really happen. It really didn't need to, because neither of these guys are super, super popular, super famous, or anything like that. They're just good at what they're doing, and I think these guys have both been pound for pound area fighters for a minute. Unlike a lot of the other pound for pound fighters that's got titles in multiple divisions and stuff like that, these guys are just the two guys that cleaned up their division. Both of these guys have literally beaten everyone post Adonis Stevenson and Sergey Kovalev, their class. All right. Even though Arthur is kind of in that same class as far as age, he wasn't involved in those fights between Ward, Kovalev, and Adonis Stevenson. All right. So this is a really important matchup, and I can't wait to see it tomorrow. And to be honest, I'm happy. I'm very happy that it's happening, and I'm happy that they're promoting this fight as if it's it is a big fight. A lot of diehard boxing fans been wanting this fight, but they're promoting it like it's one of those fights with the bigger names, like an Anthony Joshua type of fight, or Canelo, or Tank, or Terrence Crawford. Every time I turn on YouTube, there's some content with these fighters there, and I like that, because they usually don't move that way when it's a big fight with fighters that people respect, the diehards respect. But I think with Turkey Al-Sheikh and the way he's pushing this fight, I think they did a phenomenal job in making this fight happen, but also promoting the fight and pushing viewers, especially because of the fact that these guys are not trash talkers. You know what I mean? These guys are just not going to sell the fight like the way some of these other fighters would. There's usually some kind of tension or some kind of trash talking between the two fighters. In this case, there's none of that, but they're still pushing it heavy because this is a very important fight. And these two are two of the best fighters in the world. Without having to fight each other, they literally beaten everybody else in the division. If one of them didn't do it, the other one did. So I'm very happy to see this fight, and I'm happy that they were able to make it. The WBC weren't sanctioning the fight originally because of the war in Ukraine, and being that these are two fighters from Russia, they weren't going to sanction the fight. And they made it work, so now we're gonna get it. All right. So Artur Beterbiev, he is the 3 title holder champion here. Okay. Not saying he did most of the work. All right. He didn't do most of the work. Both of these guys have equally done a great amount of work. Artur Beterbiev, 20 wins with 20 knockouts. All right. He's knocked out everybody he's faced. All right. And there's no losses there. There's no draws there. There's no setbacks. He's 39 years old, though. What does that mean? It could be an issue in this fight. He could age at any time. When you're 39 years old, you're pushing closer and closer to, your limit, but in his most recent fights, he's still fighting as if he's in his prime. I've been listening to some of the experts and some of the pros, and some people bring up the age and stuff. Some people think that he is slowing down. I don't really agree with that. I think he's had a tough fight with Yard, but I just think Yard and his style and his athleticism probably just gave him some trouble. But outside of that, I don't believe he's slowing down at all. I think the guy up to this point is still very, very good and still very athletic. And I think his punch and power is a major factor. Right, but he picked up 3 of the titles, and I think his best win was against Oleksandr Vosdik, who he retired at that time. Yes, he returned, but he retired at the time after losing to Artur Beterbiev. And I think at that point, it was clear to me when they fought that Beterbiev, Bivol, and Bostic were the top 3 guys in the division. This is post-war. This is post-Kovalev. Even though Kovalev still fights, he's not fighting as a light heavy anymore. And this is post-Adonis Stevenson. Bostic obviously retired Stevenson, and then Beterbiev went on to beat him and stopping him. All right. And I think in the most impressive wins out of all wins between these two, all right, which made him unified. All right. Arthur picked up the 3rd title by beating Joe Smith Jr., all right, who Dmitry Bivol had won a decision win against him. Okay, but Arthur's a guy that stayed and fought as an amateur for a very, very long time. All right. Phenomenal, top tier amateur. All right. From Russia. Had beaten Kovalev in the amateurs as well. All right. Very familiar with him. All right. So even though he wasn't in that class of Ward and Kovalev, he has experience in fighting Kovalev. All right. So yeah, we'll get to his stream shortly. Just wanted to give an introduction of Beterbiev and how we got here. Now, this fight was supposed to happen in June, right? But he had to pull out because of the injury, and he's been very injury prone throughout his pro career. Like almost every fight, there's some sort of injury or there's COVID or whatever. There's something that happens with Beterbiev that normally delays the fight for a little bit. All right. And that same happened because this was supposed to happen earlier in June. And, while he was out, Bivol went on to fight Malik Zanat. So he did have a fight to keep himself busy there. And he did get his first stoppage he had in a while. But Beterbiev had some kind of a jaw surgery, I believe. And that could be a factor, because being 39, been in a lot of wars, had a ton of amateur fights. That could be a factor, all the injuries. I mean, he seems to be good. I've seen his open workout. He's still doing the same routines that he's been doing for years. But having a jaw and an injury and being that he's been so durable over the years, that could play a factor. It may not. Who knows? We just got to wait and see until tomorrow. All right. So, Arthur is... he did have a fight with Callum Smith earlier this year, who was his mandatory, or he stopped him without too much of a struggle. And, he fought Anthony Yard last year, and it's probably his second toughest fight in his pro career. I went to the fight out in the UK, and it was a great fight. It was a competitive fight, even though Yard got stopped. It was good moments. He had a lot of good moments in that fight. All right. So that's pretty much how we got here. Again, luckily this fight is even happening, man. I'm just glad that it's happening and we need it. Dmitry Bivol, on the other hand, okay, 23 wins with 12 knockouts, no losses, no draws. All right. A little younger. He's 33 years old. As far as dimensions, roughly the same, roughly around the same height, reach. I think they're like an inch apart. But Dmitry Bivol is the other guy that's came up and right away started fighting some of the top tier fighters. And I think his best win early on was against Sullivan Barrera. And at this point, Barrera had only one loss to Ward. Okay. But he stopped Barrera, and that was his very last stoppage for a long time. And he had some tough fights in between. He fought Craig Richards. He fought Joe Smith Jr. He's fought some top light heavies over the years. But the most noticeable win in Dmitry Bivol's resume is the Canelo Alvarez fight. All right. Canelo went up after becoming undisputed to challenge Bivol to try to fight for a championship at another division. Now, he previously won a title there by beating Kovalev years ago, but this was a better fight, a better matchup, more difficult. Bivol was in his prime. Canelo was in his prime, at super middleweight, coming off of being undisputed and having that phenomenal run that he had there. So he went up to try to challenge Bivol. And Bivol beat him, with me, in my opinion, with ease. Not nearly the most difficult Bivol fight. I just think that Canelo in that fight, I know a lot of people like to go to that. I didn't like the way Canelo fought in that fight. I think that was a fight where Canelo had a lot of momentum, and I think he was at his very highest point as far as his legacy, by becoming undisputed. And he was stopping guys, breaking Billy Joe's jaw, stopping Plant, beating down on Callum Smith, the much bigger Callum Smith. And I think at that point, Canelo probably needed to be humbled a little bit, because he is a much smaller guy. Even at 168, he's not a big guy. And he went into the Bivol fight, and I think the way he chose to fight that fight wasn't the right way. I think we needed the Canelo that was in a Triple G rematch, that he was trying to match Triple G's volume. His jabs was on point in that fight. We didn't really get that in a Bivol fight. I think he tried to overwhelm Bivol with his power, and it didn't really work out that way for him. He got outworked, he got outboxed, he got outclassed. And that's Bivol's most noticeable win, but it's not his toughest fight, but everyone is always going to go back to that win. So even though Beterbiev picked up more titles, Bivol has a noticeable name by beating Canelo Alvarez, and that's his last opponent that Canelo has lost to. Okay, but Bivol, outside of those fights, he's been the WBO champ. I believe is it WBO or the WBA? He's been the WBO. I don't see it on the box rep, but I believe it's it's a WBA. That's why it's not box rep. He's been a WBA champ over the years, and to be honest, I personally think that this fight could have happened after 2019. Okay, I think when Beterbiev beat, Volzdik, I know at that time I started talking about this fight, because it was really between those three. And we didn't get it because of politics. Top rank fighter against a guy that's fighting on the zone. It just didn't happen. And then when the sanctioning bodies got involved and when the war happened, the attack on Ukraine, that really slowed things up even further. And it just seems like we weren't going to have the fight. And these guys continue to hold their belts by fighting their Mandos and stuff over the years. And luckily Turkey came through for us. So now we got it. All right. So let's talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses before I give you my final prediction. Artur Beterbiev, when you think of him, obviously you're going to think of his power. All right. I think people are sleeping on his skill set because his power is so destructive. He's been so destructive, and he has this dog in him. He's one of the most dangerous fighters in the world. Okay. He is relentless. He is a fighter. He's very animalistic when he really gets it going. And I think people are not giving him the credit of how good of a technician he is. Now, defensively, he's not nearly as good as Bivol, in my opinion. Defensively, Bivol has the edge. So when people say boxer against puncher, boxer against puncher, defensively, Bivol is better. But when we talk about skills, which is subjective, skills, they're both skilled. They're both skilled. And it really depends on the styles, what is going to what advantages have over the next opponent, and can you apply it in the actual fight? And I think it's more about that and less about the power versus skill. This guy's skillful too. He's actually outboxed and was able to hurt every other opponent he's faced and stop every opponent he's faced. So yeah, if it was a fight of two guys that has equal power, you know, maybe Bivol would have a slight advantage. But I don't think it's between skills. I think it's skills and power versus another guy that has very good skills. You know what I mean? And that's the way I look at this fight. But you think of Artur Beterbiev, man, he brings so much to the table, He has good angles, he has good legs. He moves very quickly at times. The way he moves around the ring, his in and outs and his counter punching, Dmitry Bivol's strongest strength in me is his jab and that lead hand. But Beterbiev is a master at countering jabs, especially because they're both kind of mid-range fighters. Beterbiev is more mid-range, close range, whereas Dmitry Bivol does his best work mid-range. Neither one of them has long, long arms. So both will usually try to get in that sweet spot to do their best work. But yeah, Artur Beterbiev strengths, durability, great punch resistance. Watch the Bostic fight. Bostic is hitting him everywhere, countering him, hitting him with right hands, getting him with good shots, heavy shots to the body. And Beterbiev is built like a tank, extremely muscular, not like a Jeff Lacey muscular, you know what I mean? Not like he's loose, but he's like built like a tank, Great cardio. He's one of the best finishers out there. There's guys that get you hurt and they'll just start doing a bunch of punches but not really connecting. I think Artur is one of those guys that once he has you hurt, it's really, really hard to survive, an onslaught for him because he's throwing the right punches while you're hurt. You know what I mean? While you're trying to cover up and be defensive, he's throwing them from all over the place and using different angles, and he's getting through your high guard or whatever you have, especially if your back is against the ropes. All right, so he's just trying to do everything to dismantle you. Plus, Beterbiev is very tricky. And what I mean by that is like he likes to play possum. That's apparent heavy in the Anthony Yard fight. Yard would land some of his biggest shots where he would have Beterbiev backing up. Beterbiev will back up into the ropes. Out of nowhere, he connects with a counter, and now he turns and spins around you, and now your back is against the ropes or the corner, and then he's going off on you. You know what I mean? So he's a chess player. He's a chess player. You know what I mean? And that don't get it twisted. He has a good jab as well. Lots of feints. Again, he's a body attacker. You know what I mean? He can fight well on the inside. He's a better fighter than Bivol on the inside. He's a full package. I just think on the defensive end, those are probably his only flaws, his major flaws at least, especially from the outside. A guy like Bivol who has a good check left hook, or even when he fought Yard, when he's out of range, sometimes he leaps in, to get in range, which is kind of dangerous. So he likes to overextend with this jab at times. And that's because he's fighting guys that usually wants to keep a distance from him. So he's usually trying to get himself in position, get in range so he can apply the pressure just to go on the attack. And the way he does it is kind of dangerous, because he can leap right into a good shot if timed properly. All right. I think that's one of his major flaws. I think another one thing that, I see with Beterbiev over countless fights is that he's so offensive minded that sometimes he kind of fall asleep at the wheel. You know what I mean? Like sometimes he'll just be walking straight in and he's not moving his head at all. and you can land a quick like 1-2, and he'll just walk and just tank it. You know what I mean? And yes, being that he's durable, yes, I get it. He can take a good punch. People are going to bring up him. I'm not going to bother bringing up him getting knocked down in the past because, Callum Johnson did drop him with a good shot. And that was a great example. Him being extremely offensive, having his hands down, not really caring about what's getting thrown back at him, and got caught with a good shot. He ended up stopping Callum Johnson right after that, and the other guy, Jeff Page. Jeff Page caught him with an early shot, a good shot early, put him down, but I think Beterbiev got him out of there right after that. You know what I mean? Beterbiev is one of those guys that he kind of falls asleep defensively. Also, when you do catch him with a good shot, sometimes he kind of gets caught up in the crowd and their reaction, and then he just goes crazy. And I think he also leaves himself openings for counter attacks. All right. No one's have taken full advantage of that because he stopped everyone he's fought. But these are definitely some flaws in his game that you have to mention. Okay. Dmitry Bivol, when I think of him, again, skills, his jab is phenomenal. All right. He has a great jab. Everything he's does is based off that jab, that lead hand. And he has a great one too. Again, he has a good left hand, but it's the jab, and everything that he's doing with that lead hand. I was listening to my part 1 breakdown, and one thing that I mentioned in that video is that he's doing everything with that jab. I mean, he's even pushing off his opponents. He's keeping his head out there. He's keeping his opponent at bay with that lead hand. But the amount of jabs changing, probing, changing the power of the jab, turning it into a hook. I've seen him even turn into an uppercut. You know what I mean? His lead hand is so tricky, and it's a real problem, because he doesn't just keep doing the same thing over and over, and he's become unpredictable with the jab. All right, so his jab is very, very good. And of course, he's going to use it to set up the right hand and everything like that. But the amount of feints, his timing, the quickness, fast hands as well, all of those things have given all of his opponents problems. All right, not the biggest punch, but I think he has respectable power enough to keep guys away from him, at least up to this point he has. All right, another thing about Bivol is that he's disciplined. All right, he doesn't make too many mistakes. So whatever the game plan is, he doesn't feed into the crowd. He doesn't feed into what's working for him at the moment. He was clearly beating Canelo, but he still fought smart and cautiously. So even when he's throwing his flurries, his combinations, even when he had Canelo against the ropes, he was aware that Canelo was trying to draw him in. And being that Beterbiev is a guy that tends to do that as well whenever he is, gets caught with a good shot. Beterbiev, Bivol is a guy that is, he keeps the game plan in his mind. He's not desperately trying to get a stoppage or anything like that. He sticks to the game plan and he tries not to make too many mistakes in here. Another thing about Bivol is that he's got some great combinations, and even, I've seen guys get caught with shots in between the punches all the time. Some guys throw great combinations, but they get caught in between. Sometimes they get a little. Bivol, when he throws his combinations, it's kind of like he doesn't continuously do it. It's kind of like an ambush where like you're not thinking of he's gonna follow up with 3-4 punches, maybe even 5 if he has you against the ropes. But one thing is with Bivol is that, especially if you're fighting out of a high guard, he's gonna pick you apart. He's gonna hit you at any open area that's there. All right. And he's a good counter puncher, especially with the jab as well. I didn't mention that his jab, he's normally throwing counter jabs all the time. So you're throwing a jab, he's throwing one right back at you. you're pulling your jab back, he's throwing another jab right in. So a guy like Beterbiev, who tends to keep his hands down a lot, he might get caught with a bunch of jabs from this guy, you know? But we all know that Beterbiev is great at countering the jabs. Like I said earlier in the video, Bivol is more of a mid-range type of guy. You know, he's not a close range fighter. Um, when you're in close, he'll just try to smother you or he'll put his high guard up. But he's not really a fighter on the inside like that. You know, he wants to be mid range. He's not really long range, more mid range. I think when it comes to flaws, is he overextends as well, especially with his jab, especially when he's fighting guys that's on the outside. I didn't talk enough about Zenad in his last fight. Um, Zenad was a guy that had a great 1-2, rangy, long arms, um, and was able to pluck away at Bivol with the jab and the right hand. And I think if this guy had a little bit more power, he could have hurt Bivol. But Zenad, who got stopped in that fight, kind of reminded me of Craig Richards. You know, Craig was good jab, good right hand. And, you know, Bivol's always fighting with his hands up. But those guys were able to punch through the guard right through the middle and connect, you know, with the jab. He just couldn't see the right hands coming behind the jab. And I think better be if a guy like him and his caliber, who has a good jab, um, you know, those right hands, especially with the counter over the jab, those right hands, you know, he gets, once he connects, he's usually hurting everybody he fights. So it really depends on Bivol. Bivol's never been down. But his durability, if his holds up here, I think he'll definitely do well. But again, you know, big right hands for Beterbiev. How many are you going to take? Um, you know, I don't know. So my final prediction, man. Look, I've been back and forth about this fight more than any other fight in a long time. It's been a long time. Over the years, I've been back and forth, and even as recent as this week, I've been back and forth still about how this fight is going to go. Um, when it comes to Beterbiev, you know, I think the main thing here is can he really hurt this guy by landing the right hand? You know what I mean? Can the right hand hurt Bivol? You know, I think that's the key thing. Can he counter Bivol's jab and hurt him? You know, I think if he connects enough, he will hurt him. I think he can hurt anybody. All right, he's proven that. But can he hurt this guy? You know, I think that's the key thing. I think Bivol will probably land the most because he has that jab and he's so quick, you know. And when it comes to their legs, right, I did mention that Beterbiev is a good mover and stuff. I don't think, you know, Beterbiev is a better mover than Bivol because I think Bivol is kind of like really quick in and out. He gets himself out of range very quickly. But one thing about Bivol that I worry about when it comes to him is that when he's getting overwhelmed a little bit or his opponent's offensive, he kind of like clams up and go into a high guard. And sometimes he puts himself on the ropes a little too much. So that can be an issue for him. But when the fight is in the center of the ring, Bivol is normally front foot heavy. And I think people that are expecting Bivol to just dance around and move and be invasive, that's not the way he fights. He's going to come straight at Beterbiev early. All right. And he's going to be daring Beterbiev to throw first so he can counter. Both of these guys are going to be playing chess in this fight. Bivol will be quicker. I think Bivol is capable of hurting him. I don't think he's the biggest puncher, but I think he could hurt Beterbiev. All right. He has been down before. He has been buzzed by certain fighters. I don't think Bivol is as durable as Bostic was in that fight. I don't think offensively Bivol could connect in the ways that Bostic did in that fight. I have to go back to that fight all the time when discussing these two because it was the most impressive win out of both of their resumes. You know, Bostic landed good, moved well, was good defensively in probably the first half of the fight, but it just wasn't enough. And the reason why I'm going to roll with Beterbiev on this one is simply because when the fight actually breaks out and this guy decides to just make it where he doesn't want to box anymore, I think Beterbiev probably might be too much for Bivol. Okay. Um, I've been back and forth with this for a long time, and Beterbiev is just the way he beats his opponents is just on a different level. It's just different, and I can't dismiss that. You take away the Canelo win, it's just too much of a difference. And I'm not just talking about their common opponent and Joe Smith Jr. I'm just talking about everybody, and I know styles make fights, and I think Bivol has everything it takes to win this one. If he wins, I am not surprised at all. I mean, even when it comes to betting, I I made my bet, my position. I took a betting position like maybe Sunday, Monday earlier this week. Um, I had better be in winning by stoppage. I had better be in winning by stoppage. I think if it goes the distance, I see Bivol winning. Okay. I wouldn't be surprised at a possibility of a draw, you know, because I think Bivol may be more consistent, but I think Beterbiev may be more effective because of his power. All right. It might be similar to like another fight that's on this card, which is Frazier Clark and Fabio Wardley. Similar to that fight where Frazier was more consistent. Just jab all night, nice counters, uppercuts. But then you had Wardley in that 30 seconds of each round just exploded and would hurt Frazier and put him in some kind of trouble. It could be one of those situations where Bivol's boxing good, but Beterbiev when he lands a good shot, it's just more effective. But if this fight breaks out at some point, Bivol's going to try to hold his ground. But how durable is he? He's not a big guy at 168. All right, so I'm just going to roll with Beterbiev on this one. All right. I'll be going live tomorrow. Again, I apologize for the lateness of this breakdown. I've been receiving a massive amount of messages and comments on this fight. I apologize to you guys. We'll talk more about it. All right. But I wanted to get this breakdown out of the way because the fight is tomorrow. I will be here live. I'll see you guys tomorrow. It should be a great one. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.